What's up guys, Eagle here from ProNDC. Welcome to another ESO build video. Today I want to focus on the Magicka Templar PVE build update for the Wolfhunter DLC. Quite some changes since the last patch, so if you know what those changes are, stay tuned. So that was the DPS test on the 6-mil skeleton with orbs, drain, and with minor vulnerability from infallible ether, because I use a shock enchantment, and if I want to have better comparisons, I need 100% vulnerability uptime, because otherwise the uptimes are very inconsistent, as the shock damage glyph can apply minor vulnerability. And in trials, usually the uptimes of minor vulnerability are between 80 to 100%, so that is quite accurate. Let's get to stats now. So I currently am a high elf. I personally prefer the high elf because it has more recovery. Sustain can be a little bit of an issue sometimes, though. Just let me show you the combat metrics from the DPS. As you can see, the recovery per second is 1.5. Magicka per second, and my drain is almost 1.6, so it's almost even. You should not have issues with sustain if you play the build the same way that I do. I'm not even a vampire here because I had to record this build on the PTS, as my Magicka Templar is built around healing, and there's a lot of skills I haven't leveled on that Magicka Templar. So high elf, my personal preference, because it has more recovery. If you are a vampire, which is currently bugged on the PTS, you will have a little bit more recovery, 10% if you are stage 2 or higher. You can be vampire without any problems. I do not recommend to go to a higher stage than stage 3. In most cases, if you need to lower it even more, you can just do it with the Bloody Mara buff food. So I currently use the Thief Wonderstone. I used to go with the Apprentice last patch. The Thief is a little bit stronger in group and raid scenarios with all the crit buffs that you have, just a tiny little bit. Here I currently use Witch Mother's Potent Brew. Of course, Clockwork Citrus Relay is a little bit stronger. However, on the PTS we currently do not have the recipe, and they reset all the characters, so I wasn't able to transfer the Clockwork Citrus Relay to my bank and use it on this character. On points to Magicka. And yeah, other races that work are of course the Dark Elf. Should actually be a bit more potential DPS. It's not that much more compared to High Elf, so no need to race change. And also Breton of course works, however Breton is quite a bit weaker. And yeah, even Argonian works, so you have a little bit more HP but less Magicka. You will have less DPS, but if you do not want to maximize or like min-max your DPS, you can still go with Argonian if you want to DPS from time to time. So here you have the overview of my gear. You can see everything I wear, all the traits that I use, all the enchantments that I use, and I will also of course cover alternative set options in this video. So I currently wear of course 5 Perfected Sororia, which is not easy to get. I admit that you would have to go farm Cloud Rest +1 at least, and then you can get some armor pieces. If you want jewelry pieces, you have to do at least +2 for the perfected version. Then they will be purple, and if you do +3, you can get gold jewelry pieces. Still, Perfected Sororia is the best option for DPS. I know that there's a lot of people out there who claim that Sororia is bad if you have to move a lot, but that is not the case. There were done some tests in the past, and they've shown that with the perfect version of Sororia, you need 3 to 4 stacks to make it stronger than any other Magicka DPS set. So with just 3 to 4 stacks, it will be stronger compared to Burning Spellweave with good uptimes. And I use it in Cloud Rest hard mode on my Magicka Nightblade all the time if I have to stay on top focus spheres. So I have to move a lot actually to focus those spheres and the mini bosses. So I cannot stand in the circle all the time, but I still get more average spell damage compared to Burning Spellweave, and on top of that, with the perfect version I have about 2k more max Magicka with horn buff and stuff like that. So Perfected Sororia, even in fights where you have to move a lot, will give you the most DPS. You can however use the non-perfected version that also works. Other sets that you could combine with Burning Spellweave, which you see here, are Mother Sorrow, Julianus of course. You might even make Twiceborn Star work. It will be about the same DPS as Julianus, depending on what Mother Stones you use. And yeah, that's actually pretty much it for the sets that I recommend to wear on the body. You could replace Burning Spellweave with Mother Sorrow, jewelry pieces, and a staff. That also works because then you can purchase the staff, which is nice, so you don't have to farm Burning Spellweave. The DPS difference is almost non-existent. I had a little bit more DPS with Burning Spellweave on the Magicka Templar compared to Mother Sorrow, but you need to have good Burning Spellweave uptimes. So if you can track your uptimes and you see that you're struggling a bit with the uptimes and they are like at 50% or lower, you might want to go with Mother Sorrow instead to have like safe stats, and you will get a lot of crit chance. Burning Spellweave, please do not forget that you only need 4 pieces if you have a staff, so 3 jewelry pieces and the staff, which counts as 2 pieces, make the 5-piece bonus. We only need it on the front bar because we spend most of the time on the front bar, and we still get good uptimes there. We have a Maelstrom Inferno Staff infused with the Fiery Weapon Damage enchantment, and we have a Charged Weapon enchantment on the Burning Spellweave Staff. Depending on the scenario, you might want to change your glyphs. I always say that for the Wolfhunter DLC. So for example, if you go as Sound Sanctorium, like the way how it works is when you put down your blockade, it will activate glyphs that harm your opponent, like debuff him or do damage to him. So like Fiery Weapon, Charged Weapon, then of course Absorb Magicka, Crusher, etc. They will get procced by your blockade. However, they activate on the target that is closest to you standing in the blockade. So for example, in trash fights or in fights with a lot of ads, in Sound Sanctorium, like I said, the mini bosses will probably be closer to you most of the time. So what you want to do then is put the weaker enchantment, which in this case is Charged Weapon, or a Berserker Glyph on the back bar and put the fiery weapon enchantment on the front bar, so you can have better control over what target you actually want to hit with the fire enchantment. Because if the fire damage enchantment is on the front bar, you can activate it with your light attacks and hit certain targets. For example, like the protectors, or in the case of a Silent Centaurium, Olms, Sand Olms. So adjust your enchantments to your situation. If you have multiple staves, if you do not, I recommend to go with fiery weapon on the back bar and a Berserker Glyph on the front bar instead of charged weapon. This will be the safest bet, because in trash fights you need more spell damage to get the maximum out of your AoE abilities, because the charged weapon will not help you. The charged weapon enchantment will not help you increase your AoE DPS at all. It's just for a pure single target. But yeah, infused on both staves. That's pretty much it for the two 5-piece sets. And for the monster set, I currently wear Zaan if I can go melee. If I have to play ranged, I switch it out for Vulcan Scoria. That's basically your best bet. You have a lot of damage over time effects proccing that monster set a lot of times. It is around 1k DPS weaker compared to Zaan, depending on if you can proc Zaan on cooldown. It's much easier to proc Vulcan Scoria on cooldown. Zaan, however, gives you a bit more crit chance. Vulcan Scoria gives you more max HP. So Zaan, even with the 1-piece bonus, adds a little bit more DPS. But that's pretty much it for the sets. If you have any further questions regarding sets, just ask me in the comment section. Let's get to skills. So here you have the overview of skills. It's pretty simple. If you want to have a more detailed explanation of the skills, I recommend to watch the Somerset version of the build. The only thing that really changed is Radiant Oppression. So we actually use the Execute now because it got buffed quite a lot. They increased the additional damage in Execute by 150%, which is a lot. I played around with Purifying Light compared to Solar Barrage, but Solar Barrage got changed. Like, it had a cast time last patch, they removed that, but also reduced the damage of that skill by 40%. And it's like Solar Barrage is almost 3k Magicka, so almost twice the cost of Purifying Light. Purifying Light will help you a lot with sustain, however that skill is a little bit buggy, so you might want to change or swap out Purifying Light for Solar Barrage. Solar Barrage ticks every 2 seconds, and every 2 seconds you get an increased damage on your next light attack, like 40%. That's really nice. So you get that 4 times, like 4 times for each cast of Solar Barrage, and you get a little bit AoE DPS, but it's quite weaker compared to last patch. So for pure single target, if Purifying Light doesn't bug, you will get more DPS from Purifying Light. If you like, I recommend to check your combat metrics if you are a PC player. So make sure Purifying Light goes off quite a lot. If it does not, I recommend to swap it out for Solar Barrage, or just completely leave it out. Maybe put, I don't know, Structured Entropy on there for 5% more max HP, or whatever skill you like to have on the front bar. If you think Solar Barrage is not worth it because it's very expensive. But those are basically the changes that we made. Radiant Oppression, really strong as an Execute. We use that at 25% and lower. Like at 25%, I basically recast all my dots. So I cast Blazing Spear, I cast my Blockade of Fire, my Vampire's Bane, and one time Purifying Light. I make sure that my Minor Force is up all the time, and then I just spam the Execute, and when my Blockade runs out, I just recast the Blockade to proc Burning Spellweave again, and also use the Fiery Weapon enchantment on cooldown. So I just put down the Blockade and then go with the Execute again. It hits really hard. If you use Bloodthirsty pieces, which I do not in this build, it will hit even harder. Although I did some tests and I had the best results with full Arcane still. Like the Execute is stronger, but it's not as strong as it used to be like a year and a half ago, when it could crit for like more than 100k. with all the trials, like all the raid buffs. But it's really strong again, so I recommend to use the execute at 25% or lower. Before that, you can just keep on playing your rotation, cast the dots on cooldown. What you also want to do is cast channel focus one time, and every other time you recast Rearming Trap if you cannot track it. Otherwise, you obviously want to cast the channel focus and Rearming Trap on cooldown too. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The skills, you can see them all here. Like I said, if you want to have a more detailed explanation of the skills and why use these skills, check out the Somerset version of this build. For CP, I currently, for red and green, this is very situational. I do not recommend to copy the red CP. This is like a balanced CP distribution. You want to adjust your CP to the trial or the content that you play, because there's trials and contents where you do not get any elemental damage or where you not get any physical damage, and so you can take out champions points from there. It's completely up to the content that you play. For the green CP, you can copy that if you want to. Usually I have a few points to sprinter in trials if we go for score, so 75 arcane is a must in my opinion, and the rest is completely up to you and what you prefer. If you roll dodge a lot, if you block a lot, you want to put more points into Shadow Ward and Tumbling, and that's pretty much it. But which is more important is the blue CP. So I currently have 21 here. You actually only need like 16 to 19 for magic characters in trials, depending on what buffs you have in your group. However, keep in mind the debuffs and buffs have a certain downtime. So if you you want to put a few more points into spell erosion to compensate the downtime of debuffs like Alcohol Crusher, Infused, Torx Pack Crusher, Power of the Light, etc. Usually Power of the Light sits at around like 80%. There are of course situations where healers use it and they can get higher uptimes, close to 100%, which is of course nice, but that depends a little bit. So you want to have a few more points in spell erosion to compensate the downtime of these debuffs. On top of that, you also want a few more points to spell erosion if you have trash fights. So in VMall, VHOF, all the Cracklock trials, you should keep in mind that these ads cannot get debuffed. Like, not all of them can get debuffed, and then debuffs, if they get debuffed, they will run out, so we'll have better uptimes on bosses, and the more points you have in spell erosion, the more damage you will deal to them. It's pretty simple. Other than that, I have 56 into Elemental Expert, 52 into Elfborn, 61 to Master at Arms, 14 to Staff Expert, and 56 into Thaumaturge. If you need more points into Penetration, use CP from Staff Expert. In Execute, while you channel your Radiant Oppression, you do not do light attacks. So light attacks do not make up that big of a part of DPS for the Magicka Templar. So yeah, you can take out some points from Staff Expert. It's not necessary to have them here. Still, light attacks deal the most DPS overall, so you want to boost that damage quite a bit in your champion points. But that's pretty much it for the champion points. Let's go to the skeleton and talk about the static rotation for the console players out there. So here we are on the skeleton. Basically, for the console players, the static rotation is pretty simple. Like I said, if you do not track your Rearming Trap and your channel focus, every time you go to the back bar, you use channel focus one time, the next time you use Rearming Trap. It also depends a little bit, do you want to have 1 second downtime of the blockade or not? But other than that, it's pretty simple. So we have Vampire's Bane here as a single target dot. We have the blockade as an AoE. So I always use blockade, Vampire's Bane. Then I use my Blazing Spear, my Purifying Light, and then I do Elemental Weapon 4 times. If I do not cast Rearming Trap or Channel Focus, I can do that because I can track these buffs. If you want to play a static rotation, I just recommend to use 3 elemental weapons with light attacks, then go to the back bar and start over again. Like I said, every other time, like alternate between Channel Focus and Rearming Trap. So it pretty much look like this. So we do use blockade, Vampire's Bane, trap, laser spear, purifying light, and then 3 times our elemental weapon with light attacks, and then we start over again. Now we use channel focus instead. 1, 2, 3. Keep in mind we overcast our Vampire's Bane. Yeah, we recast it 3 seconds too early, but that's pretty much it how the static rotation looks. Of course, when we use our ultimate on the front bar or the back bar, we use 1 less elemental weapon, so we only use it 2 times. If you are on PC, you can track your skills. You just recast the stuff on cooldown, like I did in the DPS test. This will result in more DPS, but that's pretty much it. As for ultimates, always go with Fiery Rage unless you are an execute and you know you cannot get the 240 ultimate ready before the fight ends. So you want to use an Empowering Sweep and execute because it's really cheap, so you might be able to use it like 1 or 2 times in execute. However, the most DPS you will get if you use Fiery Rage all the time. Yes, that's actually pretty much it for the update for the Magicka Templar. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section. And also, before I forget it, for the console players, you might not want to use elemental weapon at all. If you have some performance issues and your light attacks don't go off what you want to do, then is of course go with Force Pulse, or what you can also do if you can play melee, go Puncturing Sweep. But that's everything there is to it. So guys, if you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button, and if you do not want to miss any more ESO content, hit the sub button. I'd really appreciate it. So I hope you tune in next time too, and yeah, until then, bye bye.